Hello, thank you for joining me today and welcome to 5 Ways to Turn Your Worst Customers into Your Biggest Fans, your confrontation pocket guide. I am your host and happy pharmacist, Mary Sheehan. This is a free to you no cost webinar, although you do have to spend your time and attention, and for that I am very grateful. I have several other webinar trainings available to you, and people have asked for a specific one that deals just with confrontation. So here it is. You are in the right place if you know you would love your job if your customers were nicer, more respectful, more grateful. You know you deserve respect, but you don't get it. You're beginning to feel the effects of stress, and you know it has a lot to do with your customers. And you fantasize about quitting your job. You are scared to death of conflict. You feel undervalued as a professional. You are stressed out. If any of that sounds like you, you're in the right place for this webinar training. Does it feel like more of your time is spent fighting with people or trying to avoid a fight with people than doing what you really want to do, which is to help people get healthy? I'm going to read for you an actual Facebook post from a few months ago. I'm not going to name who posted it or where it was posted, but here it is. And I think it speaks volumes using someone else's words. And here's the actual post. I love my job. I seriously do. My profession is something I'm passionate about and is constantly growing. However, my profession also seems to be going down the crapper. Customers, patients are becoming increasingly rude, demanding, and self-righteous. Do you yell at your doctor for your 45-minute wait past your appointment time? Then why do you yell at me for a 15-minute wait to fill a script? Do you yell at the cashier because you just stood in line for your groceries for 20 minutes? No. Then why yell at me for a 15-minute wait for 5 scripts? We don't just slap a label on a bottle or a box. Well said. So this idea of healthcare professionals having to live in fear and anxiety and losing confidence is not the picture of these smart, capable professionals. I know we are, and you know we are. You know, it's funny. Here's what we're going to cover today before I go on to why this stuff is important. So we'll cover these 6 things in this webinar: strategies to set you up for a peaceful outcome, techniques to get your loudest, most obnoxious customers to be quiet and listen, teaching people how to treat you. We'll cover that. You'll discover how to finally end a workday feeling energized instead of drained, and you'll learn how to create a work environment where your confident leadership rules the day. All these 5 things and probably a few other tidbits you're going to get today in this webinar training. And we'll do it in under an hour. And it's funny because we spend all this time in school and on the job in the pharmacy, and no one teaches you how to deal with conflict. I think that's crazy. Conflict is one of those things that creates the most stress for us, engaging in it or trying to avoid it. Even the people whom you think would have some sort of a handle on this do not. Then we think, well, if my boss or HR can't handle conflict, how the hell am I supposed to be able to? And that's natural. It's also natural to not know what to do. If you were never taught, how are you going to know? And that is why I'm here. And I think this training is very important for us today because with the job market the way it is, we aren't just going to get up and leave our job in hopes of landing in the store with all the nice customers. Because that store like Oz doesn't exist. No one's teaching this stuff, and we really, really do want it. We wish we could do better with conflict because this would greatly reduce our stress levels. I want to tell you the good news, and that is that you have the power to make many of these changes I'm going to talk to you about. And I'll show you where that power is and how to use it. We want to go from frazzled, annoyed, stressed, resentful, and overweight maybe even because we're stress eating, and miserable, to in control, confident, empowered, and satisfied with our work. And one of the ways to do this is to put yourself in charge, not them. And them is anybody but you. I'll teach you how to lead the people instead of them being in control of your workday. Now, I've been a pharmacist for over 20 years. I'm still on the front lines of healthcare in retail pharmacy, just like many of you. Many of my years in pharmacy before retail were spent in large and small hospitals that had a big focus on clinical services. I've done home infusion. I've done compounding. I was part of a team that put in one of the first physician pharmacies in a physician's office in Ohio. I'm on the ancillary faculty at our local medical pharmacy school. I run an MTM program for senior citizens with a grant from Kaiser where we track outcomes. I've done other community-based things like being a keynote speaker for a prescription drug abuse initiative with the Ohio Department of Drug and Alcohol Addiction Services. But the consistent thing through my career has been teaching and mentoring others with problems both personal and professional. Even in those early days as a little baby pharmacist at Metro Health Medical Center in Cleveland, I was doing this. On those slow Sunday evening shifts, the staff would kind of gather, and we had this open forum type of thing where anyone could discuss what they were struggling with. It could be a personal thing, something they read about or saw on TV. It could be work-related. Everyone was included, and everything was up for discussion. And we used to call this On the Couch with Mary Sheehan. Now, the other pharmacists would say that I marched to the beat of a different drummer. And over time, I did appreciate my own unique perspective on life's problems as much as they did. And now with the program that I'll be talking with you a little bit about later, I'm bringing the couch to you, so to speak. And we can connect one-on-one further. And also, of course, I'll be bringing the couch to you a little bit indirectly with this webinar training. Now, because I had a clinical background, it took me a while to get the hang of the retail setting, and my biggest struggle by far was dealing with conflict. I did catch on to a few tricks and how to deal with people, not have my buttons pushed all day long, which allowed me to end my days with energy instead of dragging myself through the door after my shift and vegging out in front of the computer all night long. And as I said, much of what I will teach I learned from working it out, trial and error. But also I have really great instincts, which I have honed over the years, and I can teach you to do as well. I also incorporate a lot of the stuff I've studied in Eastern traditions, alternative medicine, marketing, psychology, NLP. I've studied a lot of different things. I've always loved people, and I've always feared them. I would rather die than confront someone. I have left jobs to avoid it, ended relationships, lied, etc. Now, I do talk about my truck accident as a big wake-up call for me to start teaching this stuff. One day, I was hit on the snowy highway by a truck on the way to work. I had a long, hard recovery, physical recovery from broken bones, I had surgery, mental recovery from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I still suffer from the consequences of that accident. And the truck accident did get me on the path to start teaching this stuff. But there was another trauma that I encountered, another traumatic event, which was just as painful. And today I will tell you about the other time I was hit by a metaphorical truck, and this time the truck was a customer who blindsided me, reducing me to tears, and made me want to quit my job and never help anyone again. It was awful, and I'll tell you about it as we go along with the content of this webinar. Let me tell you about this guy first. We'll call him Mr. T. He was cranky, cantankerous, bitter. He was always alone. He would have like relationships on and off, but they never lasted. He was estranged from his family. He was really sick from working in the Pennsylvania coal mines. He had respiratory and cardiac disease. He was on Medicaid and lived in a pretty bad neighborhood near the pharmacy where I worked. So to summarize this traumatic incident, just to give you a little bit of background, I had saved his life a few times, literally, and I'm sure you guys have done the same thing for people where there's a serious drug-drug interaction and one doctor doesn't know what the other doctor's doing. So I'd intervened a couple times. I even had my pharmacy student, do an entire workup on this guy. We submitted this workup to a cardiologist, convinced him to go to a cardiologist. No one else could convince him. This probably saved his life as well because he got into this great cardiologist who finally convinced him that he needed open heart surgery. And because this surgery was in the hospital where I used to work, I even went with him to the surgery, helped him with medication follow-up and other things he needed. Like I said, he didn't have anybody, so I did this for him. And now, about a month later, I had switched stores and I didn't see him every day. To make a long story short, a few of my former coworkers started telling him terrible things about me. So one day he called me at my new pharmacy and started yelling at me. and even dropping the F-bomb about how I only helped him to make myself look good, to further my career, and basically how selfish I was, and I was only looking out for myself. And he called me on the phone to tell me all this. So what do you say to that? Nothing. You just hang up the phone. So basically, I wish I had had an emotional emergency room because I really needed one. And I just stood in the pharmacy and cried. I was absolutely devastated. How could someone who I'd done so much for treat me so horribly? So that is the story of my second trauma, and why I think it's really important that we learn how to get a handle on conflict. And just so you guys understand that, I've been there. I've been burned. I've been hurt. I've been through a lot of ugly situations at work myself. Let's get to the content. Point number 1 that we're going to cover is how to win before the battle begins. Here's some strategies that will set you up for a peaceful outcome even before there is a conflict. So let's just take a moment, though, to realize that peace isn't the absence of conflict, but is the management of conflict. So inherent in the word peace is conflict. So there's no avoiding it by definition. And it's really important to realize this because it sets a different kind of expectation. So what you can do is cultivate skills like what I teach in the Leadership Academy. My husband used to say that there's really no hiding from like people that are difficult. Like when my kids were in school, there would be always that difficult mom or dad, and I would always wish them away, like, oh, why can't they leave and not bother me ever again? And my husband would say, oh, that's okay, because when they leave, there's going to be somebody to take their place. And that is true. So you might as well learn how to deal with it. I think it's really important to have a plan, especially for dealing with conflict. You don't go to court unprepared. You don't go to a job interview unprepared. You don't even take a vacation without having a plan. Yet, you go into work without having a plan, and really no one teaches you how to be prepared for how rough this job is going to be. So when it comes to confrontation, timing is everything. And with that, I'm going to talk specifically about when to give yourself a timeout. In our haste to get it over with, we tend to rush in, and sometimes you just need a moment to assess a conflict situation and calm yourself down. Now, if the customer is really out of control, proceed with caution. But mostly, if you don't want to go forward and you really feel you have to give yourself a timeout, I'm giving you permission, and you should give yourself permission for a timeout. One time I called the manager over because there was a very serious situation. I called the manager. I said, I have a very serious situation here. Basically, the serious situation was someone was screaming in my pharmacy. But I wanted to let this person know that I was taking it seriously, and I really needed the time and the space to get the situation diffused. In fact, you can, if someone's yelling at you, you can say, you're yelling at me and I can't think. And if I can't think, I can't help. Now, there's lots of other things I teach about timing, but I really wanted to give you guys this one because I feel like we don't allow ourselves a timeout. We're so anxious and stressed out and concerned that it's really important to know that you can give yourself a timeout. Okay, so let me see. I think I'm missing a slide. Okay, well, there was a slide that I had that basically is about getting your little ducks in a row and knowing what to say in the time of stressful situations. So I used to carry index cards around with what to say when people were angry, how to diffuse the situation. I have battle tested many phrases that have worked on very angry people. I gave you one just now. You're yelling at me. I can't think. And if I can't think, I can't help you. I see that you're really upset. I'm going to take this seriously. Let's take a moment and look at this. Let me think of some other things I have said to people. wow, this is important to you. We've got to get this resolved. I just have tons of ways to say things and actual things to say that I do teach for very specific situations that people are going through. And basically, I think conflict is one of those things that you just have to learn to get comfortable with by engaging in it. There's simply no other way. It took me years to get the words. I had to try and fail, but I was trying, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I really wanted to learn this stuff because no one taught me, and I was miserable in retail with all this conflict. So I personally hired someone who gave me a task to confront anybody that was confrontational or angry. So one time so I had to go into every store, and I was floating at the time. And if there was a hostile customer, I had to put everyone on alert. If there's somebody mean or angry on the phone or in person, I got to go in and handle it. And they'd be like, why on earth would you want that? And I said, because I'm taking this confrontation course and I need to do it. So I had a man that I heard yelling from I don't know how many people away. He had 3 feet on me. I went right up to him, having no idea what I was going to say. I looked at him right in the face and I said, you're mad at me and I don't even know why. We haven't even met yet. And he just stopped kind of dead in his tracks. So I met him where he was. I went right up to him, like he wasn't going to intimidate me. I had to learn how to do it. So it can be learned. You feel people out. It is a process, absolutely. And one of the things that I learned is about how to match the energy. And I think I did this with this gentleman, and I certainly teach how to do it. And there's definitely some nuances. So I teach how to match their energy, and I'll go over that with you right now and show you how you intuitively know how to do this. And also, your best friends sometimes start out as your worst enemies. And I know that's true for me and other people that I've taught. The customers that they hated the most, they end up liking the best because they have turned the situation around totally. Okay, so number 1 is matching energy. And no one's really teaching this stuff, and they make it all about words. But 90% of communication is nonverbal. Words are important, but really what I'm talking about is matching someone's energetic state. So if they're big, loud, and animated, you kind of raise your voice a bit, not your emotion. You're not angry or agitated, but you raise your volume of voice. You hold your posture in a big way. You might wave your hands a bit. You need to meet them where they are energetically. And you already know how to do this, you guys. So imagine this. And you can even close your eyes if you want. If this little old lady walks up to your counter and speaks softly to you, asking for your help, what would you do to answer her? You would intuitively kind of bend over, you'd lean in, you'd bring your body close, you'd speak to her as she is speaking to you softly, right? So you know how to do it. And I understand it's easier when a gentle, kind woman is coming at you versus a big, loud, say, alpha dog. Alpha male, alpha dog, alpha male, you know what I mean, like those kind of dominant people. So it is easier, but I'm telling you, you already know how to do it, so you can do it. It's just in a different way. So, like, believe it or not, so the same technique can be applied to heated emotional situations, and it's not what you've been taught. You may have been taught to tell someone to calm down, please be quiet, settle down. And you guys know from trying that, it doesn't work. In fact, it often makes someone madder. You might have got that lesson really easily or completely in your real life, your personal life with people. If you're in an argument with your partner or friend, your husband, your wife, you tell them to calm down. Did they calm down? They probably didn't. I mean, it's not as personal at work, but the principles still apply. And you can learn to match the energy without getting emotionally involved. It does take training and lots of practice, which we would definitely cover that thoroughly, especially in one of the modules that I teach in the Leadership Academy. And like I said, it's very easy to make a connection with someone who we perceive as kind, sweet, and nice, but it's harder to connect with someone who is confrontational. So to recap, the one thing you can do is to match their energy, which I already showed you, you know how to do in one kind of situation. You just need to apply it to another kind of situation. So let me see if I make sure that we go over this. Okay, you're matching their energy. And the benefit to you is to get them to calm down quicker and to kind of redirect the energy. All right, so let me teach you how to teach people how to treat you. All right, 4 simple ways to get your customers to respect and appreciate you as the valuable professional you are. Right, the number one thing, and this is a game changer, you must realize that you are in charge of each and every interaction, not the other person. In fact, the only reason the crabby ones get to set the tone at all is because you let them by not taking charge of the interaction. Someone has to be in charge, not necessarily dominating or coercing, but the one that sets the tone, and that can be you, and you are probably the best one to do it. You certainly wouldn't want some of your customers in charge, and yet, by not being in charge, you are default putting them in charge. You've got to learn to sit on your emotional reaction also. You're in charge, you've got to sit on your emotional reaction. And this is not easy. When someone is being emotional, it is very easy to get caught up in this. And it takes practice. All right, so there was and I see this too all the time, where people really react emotionally to their patients, and they even brag about it on Facebook. Like, this guy yelled at me and then I yelled at him, and he said something snarky to me and I said something snarky to them. And honestly, you guys, do you ever feel good when you do that? Do you ever feel good when you lose your temper? And I'm not saying you should beat yourself up over it or feel bad about it, because it happens to all of us. But what I am saying is it's probably worth getting yourself some training in this area so that you're not constantly reacting. When you constantly react, you end up exhausted. Your blood sugar goes up and down all day, your cortisol level, it's absolutely crazy. So one little hint I can give you along with this is to drop the judgment. You've got to learn to observe the situation and not get all emotional about it and start judging people. So the best hint I can give you right now, and it's such a good one. I started to do this with my kids when they were little. It's amazing how much of my life has come full circle. Like, I was dealing with toddlers that have temper tantrums. Now I'm dealing with adults that have temper tantrums. So I started to look at people that have shouting fits, temper tantrums, and whining attacks in my pharmacy as allergy attacks. So do you judge someone for sneezing? As in, why did they just sneeze? How dare they? Can you believe that person sneezing like that? While clearly screaming is not like sneezing, by thinking of yelling as sneezing, you get to diffuse your own emotional reaction by attaching a different meaning. It's a little trick, a little mind trick for yourself to help you. And you can learn to observe a person without attaching anything to it. Like, they're wrong, they're stupid, they're mean, they're crazy, they're out to get you, whatever. You don't have to do that, you guys. It's draining for you. It doesn't feel good. You can learn to observe. Now, this one took me quite a long time to get it. But once I got it, I got it. I trained myself to look at somebody who's yelling as having a sneezing attack. Just to diffuse the situation, help me be clear about what I'm going to say. All right, another thing that we can do is show your value. You can do is show your value. Now, people are less likely to attack something they appreciate or deem of value to them if it's a person or an object. So you got to start looking at yourself as valuable. You need to start talking about your value. What's in it for them for having you as a pharmacist? Why don't people treat doctors the way they treat us? I hear this complaint all the time from pharmacists. Here's some ideas why. They value the relationship with their doctor. They appreciate what this person does for them. They take their pain away. They fix their problems. They save their lives. Well, you guys, don't we do that too? Yes, but it's not always evident, and no one is going to tell your customers your value. You have to do that. I have tons of ways you can do that in my course. It's very important you learn how to do it. Just think about, for now, just think about anything you do for someone and go ahead and tell them. People are much less likely to attack something that they value, obviously. So the 4 things: you're in charge, sit on your emotional reaction, drop the judgment, and show your value. All right. The next point. Finally end the workday feeling energized instead of drained. So here's this guy holding up an imaginary wall. So this is kind of like us. All right. So imagine if you didn't dread conflict. Imagine that you handled each instance with confidence and good results. You would be less tired at the end of the day. Practicing in fear all day is incredibly draining. And one of the strategies we tend to employ to help us not feel like crap at the end of the day is to build a wall so nothing bad can get to you. The downside is that you have to maintain that wall. I suggest a metaphor of like a semi-permeable membrane instead. It's exhausting holding up that wall, you guys. You know you can't sustain it forever. Like after that story that I told you about Mr. T, that customer and how he treated me, it would have been a perfect time for me to start building walls, but I didn't. I set boundaries, but not walls. All right, next point. Create a work environment in which your confident leadership rules the day. All right, let's see. Remember who's really in charge, how to handle the fear of repercussions we're going to cover, and mistakes will happen. It's really what you do with them. And really, it's about a good work environment. Don't we all want a nice, peaceful work environment? And that means where you know how to deal with conflict. You teach your staff how to deal with conflict. Conflict is diffused more quickly. That is really what we want. And nothing can be worse than what we're experiencing already. And I don't know what you're experiencing already at work, but it's probably not very pleasant, especially when it comes to conflict. And it feels like that we are powerless, that we have all these changes thrust upon us over the years, and we have this need to do more with less and less time, less and less help, and all the stress that goes along with that, it just becomes exhausting. And I need to tell you guys too that the customers are just as affected by the changes in healthcare as we are. All the things that our corporations have, created for us to do, all the tedious stuff, all that stuff is hard for us, and it's also hard for our customers. It's kind of like we're all in this together. They don't like the cold, stark reality that has become healthcare any more than you do. And it's kind of created this no-win situation. So let's address one of our very big fears, and that is if we try to stand up for ourselves with a customer, defend a coworker, or whatever it is that you feel is the right thing to do, that doing it, in doing the right thing, there may be consequences. We're all afraid of that, so let's just get it out on the table. And we know that doing the right thing might not always line up with your company's expectations, right? And we don't want to disappoint our bosses, and we don't want to get in trouble. I have been in situations personally where I've absolutely done the right thing and I felt good about it, but my boss did not. So I've created some things to say to you guys. I call it getting your little ducks in a row, where you can have the right words to say to kind of create this situation where, say, your boss is calling you out on something, you handled something not the way that they wanted you to handle it. So I try to turn it around like, you and me, boss, we're kind of on the same page. We're all in this together. Really, the problem is the situation. I'm not the problem. The situation is the problem. So a few tips. Don't blame anyone else. Like you hate it when people deflect on you, right? So don't do it to them. Plus, everyone's onto that stuff. So own it. If you did it and they're calling you out on it, own it. Yes, I did something. You didn't like how I did it. Let's move on from there. All right. Along those lines, if you make a mistake, if you blow it, let yourself off the hook. If you don't let yourself off the hook, you're going to be miserable and drained. for maybe the rest of your career if you do this as a habit. And remember, in spite of how it feels sometimes, we are human beings, not robots. And as much as we have these, and just like we have these beautiful moments of glory, we can also have times where we really hideously fail. I had a hideous failure not that long ago at work. I really blew it with somebody, and she called corporate, and I just said to my boss, hey, listen, I blew it. If I'm going to be that person who you count on to deal with bad situations, I'm going to blow it sometimes. And he really appreciated that. Like, I was honest. I blew it. What are we going to do? I'm human. You're human. All right. So okay. So worst case scenarios, I give you guys lots of tools for that. And my leadership academy. What else can I tell you about when things go wrong? If we keep practicing in fear and trying to hold up the walls, we like kind of create our own personal jail, and we continue to be victims. Then we become victims of ourselves. It's bad enough that we're victims of how this healthcare system is treating us as it is. So I think it's really worth it to learn some of these techniques and think about words to use if things go bad. Get yourself off the hook. Realize you're human. All that kind of stuff. So what did we? So why not remember that things are bad enough as it is. Take the chance, make some changes. Here's some great words to use if things go south. All right, so let's move on to why you signed up for this webinar. Now, I don't know why you clicked on this or decided to look at a webinar about conflict, but it probably is because you are suffering from some of the things that we talked about in the beginning, and you would like to stop complaining customers in their tracks. You would like to be able to thrive in emotionally charged situations, and you would like to have a day filled with happiness and fulfillment and have an environment where your confident leadership rules the day. Who would not want that? So I do have a leadership academy for pharmacists that I've created, which I will tell you a little bit about here. And it's going to help you rekindle your passion for this profession and transform your customers in your biggest fans, even the ones that really don't like you and you don't like. You're going to turn those around too and feel renewed and rejuvenated at the end of every workday. All right, the Leadership Academy for Pharmacists, a few of the features of it. These are 4 modules that I've created, an hour long, about once a week. They are recorded. We're live, so we're meeting like in a format like this and a go-to webinar. You can ask your questions ahead of time. I will always answer them during the training. I record the training because I know our schedules are crazy. My schedule's crazy. Your schedule's crazy. You can be there live. You can get the recordings, 4 hours, one-on-one time for me. We get all your problems solved. We've broken it down into modules for you. When I say we, I mean me and my tech team. I'm the only teacher, but I do have people that help me with this kind of tech stuff. Module 1, you'll begin to feel more in control, more comfortable at work, and the dread starts to lift. You know how we dread bad situations? If you've got a situation at work that you just dread, there's a lot of angst and fighting and conflict, you don't want to go in. We'll work on your specific triggers. We'll teach you how to drop that wall I talked about, create the semi-permeable membrane. If you're interested in the Leadership Academy, I don't just enroll people automatically. You've got to go to prescriptionsforhappiness.com/conflict and fill out a survey. And on the survey also, there's a place for you to type in when would be the best place for me to contact you and how you'd like to be contacted. And that's because, you don't want to enroll in a course, even if it's 4 hours of your life. That's a big part of your life, 4 hours. Time is money. It should be a good fit for you. You kind of get a vibe for what I'm like from this webinar. We'll talk one-on-one. There's only so much I can cover in a webinar. So when you and I talk for like 15, 20 minutes, you can tell me about what your biggest conflict situations are, your biggest stressors are, and I'll see if what I have to offer you makes sense insofar as the Leadership Academy. Module 2 is where we really get into these emotionally charged situations. We set you up to win, teach you how to turn your enemies into allies, and I'll go definitely deeper into my energy matching system that I covered a little bit today. Here's a lovely testimonial from one of my students. She didn't do a classroom situation or a group situation. I worked one-on-one with her, and she's doing so great now. She definitely had some confidence issues, even though she was incredibly capable. It just breaks my heart, you guys, how capable we are and how beat up we get. And so this is my way of combating that for you, helping you gain confidence, happiness, energy. Here's another testimonial. I've worked with some nurses. I've worked with some physicians. Dr. Faulkner was in the Leadership Academy. He has some lovely things to show you guys about how I work. Also one-on-one in this case. Module 3, you will reconnect with your purpose and passion. Purpose and passion is what gets you through when times are tough. So when you have that crappy day and that bad interaction and that conflict and that fight, if you have passion and purpose set up, which you'll get from the Leadership Academy, it is easier to get through those times. I promise you. I'll teach you how to use your words like the perfect drug. We'll go much deeper into that. And specific too, not only deeper, but specific into your personal issues that you're having at work. And Module 4 is really what it's all about. Taking everything that we learned and creating a culture of support, unity, and trust. You lead the team. The team likes to be led. You start to be the teacher. You teach what I've taught you. And you create this society of supportive, rational individuals. So again, there's the link, prescriptionsforhappiness.com/conflict to fill out the survey. More specific about you and your problems with conflict. This is from a nurse who really had issues with conflict. So exhausted this man would come home from work that it was affecting his home life, really deteriorating his family. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. And that's sad. And it doesn't have to be that way. I love how he talks about how practical what I teach is. It's all about real world solutions for me. I also give you 5 ebooks, which are very supportive. They're PDFs. You download them, you have them. Support all the material that I teach you in the Leadership Academy. I guarantee you satisfaction, and that's one of the reasons that I've decided to have everybody that wants to be a student in the Leadership Academy do a brief survey first so that we can get to know each other a little bit. And then you don't have to enroll in something that's not going to be a good fit. Why do that? Why waste your time with that? Nobody wants to do that. So if you go to prescriptionsforhappiness.com/conflict, fill out the survey. I'll be in touch. We'll have a little one-on-one talk about whether or not this would be a good fit for you. And again, I thank you all for joining me for this online training on conflict. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you practice a little bit about what I taught you today. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you again.